Ban now on gas-powered classic cars.
Yeah, but this Corvette is now impounded and could be destroyed under state law.
Giving the green light to ban the sale of gas-powered cars.
This could, in fact, be the beginning of the end for classic car lovers in California as they plan to ban all of those old classics, old Porsches, old hot rods, old muscle cars. And a lot of them because of the emissions. And as well, now the latest is some of the chrome that's created to create these chrome bumpers, and the chromium products that go into that are allegedly 500 times more toxic than the emissions that a lot of these gas guzzlers actually emit. According to California Air Resources Board, or CARB, they identify that the chrome product that you often see on a lot of old classic and muscle cars with that shine and that distinctive look is causing serious health effects. As it stands, they look to adjust regulations that could include phasing out the hexavalent chromium products that are used in these chrome bumpers and chrome trim pieces. Hexavalent chromium is that product that they use. You see it all over in your kitchen appliances, your faucets, your sinks. You see it on chrome bumpers of a lot of old classics and hot rods. And CARB wants to impact that by stating that these chrome plating process is as much as 500 times more toxic than diesel exhaust. And as we've just rolled into 2025, knocking on the door is 2027, where in fact, CARB's ban would be the first in the world that proposes a ban on chromium-6 in decorative plating products like the bumpers as well as kitchen fixtures by 2027. Now, Jane Williams, the executive director of California Communities Against Toxics, told the LA Times even the EU hasn't found a substitute for crucial uses and is not adopting the same change. We will be working with industry and military to find the replacements needed as a substitute for these amazing anti-corrosion type finishes. As it stands in California alone, there's over 110 facilities that are creating products with this chromium-based product. And the vast majority of those are making products for the car industry and the aerospace industries. Clearly, that's going to have a huge impact on jobs, the quality of the products, and then a lot of people that stand up for these obviously are going to ask the question, well, what do you replace it with? Plastics? We know plastics emit all kinds of toxic materials known to mankind already, and so which is actually the lesser of two evils? And while a lot of the old classic land yachts, like Caddies and Mercuries, are using a lot of chrome from the 1950s and 60s, now the transition is to cars with more carbon fiber, more plastics, the dark finishing, and that is absolutely obsoleting a lot of these product requirements, except for the classic car lover. I mean, the old classic Corvettes, classic Mustangs, Camaros, those are all classic vehicles that use products like this. And as we transition to a world of all of these electrified vehicles that have no soul and hybrid vehicles, there's still a large percentage of the population within California, as well as the rest of the US, that really focus on restoration, modification, and the ongoing show and tell of their great classic car that they constantly restore, bring back to life, and show and shine on those Sunday afternoons. Brian Leiker, who's the executive director of Metal Finishing Association of California, is actually stating California is trying to enforce something that we're clearly not ready for. So what does it mean if this ban comes to fruition? What does it mean for the classic car industry? Well, there are alternatives, and products like trivalent chromium has been available since the 1990s, but it's a much darker tinge, and you lose that ultra glossy high chrome look that you get to know and love in a lot of these old classic cars. This new type of chromium, although it has been used for a while, just doesn't have the same appeal that a lot of classic car lovers would have. And it would never come close to matching what these cars came out with back in the 1960s, and clearly trying to restore some of these vehicles back to their original glory is definitely going to have an impact on the way these vehicles look. Now granted, the state legislature offered up $10 million for 3 years of a transition period where these chromium manufacturers are able to transition into something that's more alternative and a little bit more air friendly. The other flip side, once this ban is passed, you're going to be a plethora of companies, businesses, and workers out of business. You're clearly going to make a major impact on the employment as well as business success. It's going to have a huge impact. The chromium ban is going to take a major toll on the classic car sector, but unfortunately it's bigger than that, because in California they're coming down hard on stricter emissions, even on the conversion from internal combustion engines over to the EV market, where clearly the popularity for Teslas and electric vehicles massively exceeds what we're finding across the rest of the country. And while California remains hyper-focused on eco-friendly environments and the transition to 2035 that should look like all electric vehicles, that leaves the rest of the country wondering, where do we go from here? Because what we're also hearing is this year that California is also banning the use of Class A motorhomes. That's right, you can no longer drive your full-size motorhome through the state of California, coming up very soon due to emissions and the pollution that they create. Now, in August of 2023, CARB commissioned a survey of vehicles that were 1978 or older,
trying to figure out how people are using their classic cars. Now, odds are a lot of the classic car owners that did get the survey, I'm betting probably just filed that survey in the round bin.
And this ignited major concerns for classic car lovers in California. Now, in of itself, wasn't necessarily a huge issue, other than the fact that many coordinated and assumed it was tied directly to a 2020 conversation from CARB that argued that the state government should provide explicit authority to local jurisdictions to create zero-emission zones. And while some media outlets sensationalized the conversation and painted it much worse than it was clear that the trend was in California that the idea of high emissions internal combustion vehicles were not wanted, and that you would pay a price as an owner of a vehicle to use specific zones or have your vehicle banned entirely.
I can speak for a lot of them knowing that you will pry my 68 Mustang gear shift out of my cold, dead fingers.
And while there were many people in an uproar saying that they can't drive their classic cars, their older performance cars, like a Porsche, like a Camaro, the fact remains is by 2035, brand new vehicles only have to all be EVs. That's right, zero emissions by 2035. But that's only on the sale of brand new vehicles. There's further targets by CARB to suggest that 2045 is the actual end date to have zero emissions completely across the industry. Because according to the agency, it wants to cut the air pollution down. It wants to cut the air pollution down by 71%, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 85%, and drop gas consumption by 94%. And while the current California governor is in total support of this process and this program,
Governor Gavin Newsom said, quote, "Clean cars are here to stay. The Biden-Harris administration reaffirmed what we've known for decades. California can rise to the challenge of protecting our people by cleaning our air and cutting pollution."
The critics are saying, no, it's not going to happen. There's no way. And it's even specifically with the EV marketplace, there's a lot of skeptics and critics that are saying there's no way, the infrastructure's not there. How do you generate enough power to build all these EVs? And then who can even afford to buy a new electric vehicle? A lot of these vehicles are considered only affordable by the rich, and therefore a lot of people who have older vehicles, older than 1976, 1970, things that are infringing on the classic car spectrum. Many people just prefer drive their old cars that they can fix, they can wrench on. And unfortunately, now what you're finding is a market that, while on one hand they're cleaning up the air, which is great because we all want to have, fresh air to breathe. We want to pass that down to our grandkids and kids. The fact remains is there's less and less options for people to be able to do it yourself. You can't be able to fix your own car. These vehicles are too complicated these days, and certainly high voltage batteries and electric systems in these EVs make it not only insurmountable, but actually downright dangerous for a home do-it-yourselfer, meaning a lot of these vehicles are going to be out of the hands of a lot of drivers. And while many people say, you know what, California's market leaves, the classic car followers are leaving, the Enthusiast plan to take off. We're seeing a lot of jobs, businesses leaving California because of the high taxation, and now we're talking about environmental regulations, means that a lot of people are moving out. They're moving to Florida, they're moving to Texas, places where there's less strict emissions regulations, lower taxes, and it's easier to thrive with a personal small business. But while people do that, it's unfortunate because with California leading the way, it's ultimately likely going to be the small end of the wedge. And so California starts it, this is likely going to spread across all 50 states, and it's going to create a real challenge for anybody trying to maintain a classic car. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this whole storyline. Do you think this is tragic, or do you think you are welcoming these emissions changes by CARB? Do you think they should have the power to enforce what we're seeing? And does it seem like it's reasonable for the consumer to hand these over and just adopt a new EV by 2035? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And again, as always, be sure to check those videos. You're going to love them. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.